Okay, hold on. Okay.
When you think of Friends, the first names that come to mind are always the same six: Ross, Rachel, Monica, Chandler, Joey, and Phoebe. They were the heartbeat of NBC's must-see TV era, plastered across billboards in Times Square and immortalized in that fountain dancing intro set to the Rembrandts' hit song. But here's the thing. Friends wasn't built by the core six alone. Behind the laughter track and coffeehouse banter, there was a whole cast of characters who floated in and out of the story, sometimes for just a handful of episodes. On the surface, many of them seemed useless, quirky background additions who'd never carry the show. But look closer, and you'll see that these so-called throwaway roles were actually the threads that tied the bigger picture together. Today, we'll uncover 11 side characters who quietly saved the plot of Friends, and without whom the series would never have been the same. Janice, the laugh that wouldn't go away.
Janice?
Oh my God!
Those three words, punctuated by the most unforgettable laugh in sitcom history, are enough to bring Maggie Wheeler's Janice back to life instantly in your memory. At first, she seemed like little more than Chandler's annoying girlfriend, the kind of character written for a one-off joke. Her laugh grated on the other characters, and by extension, on the audience too. But Janice was more than comic relief. She became a recurring anchor for Chandler's story. Every time Chandler ran back to Janice, it revealed his struggle with commitment and self-sabotage. Her presence forced him to confront what he truly wanted out of love. By the time he found real stability with Monica, the audience could see just how much growth had taken place. Growth that wouldn't have felt nearly as profound without Janice's chaotic interruptions. Beneath the laugh was a bittersweet reminder. Sometimes the people we think are just temporary can shape our lives in permanent ways.
I want to show you why we don't just trap spiders under coffee mugs and leave them there.
The silent constant of Central Perk. At first, he was just the guy with the hair. Gunther, played by James Michael Tyler, stood silently behind the counter of Central Perk in those early episodes.
Does it even work without my sexy voice?
I like it.
But as the seasons rolled on, Gunther became one of the most familiar faces of the entire series. His unrequited love for Rachel, while often played for laughs, gave the show a thread of quiet sadness. He embodied the idea that sometimes love stories don't get their fairy tale endings. And more than that, he gave Central Perk itself a soul. Every great sitcom has its home base, and in Friends, the coffeehouse was that space. Gunther, with his steady presence and yearning glances, made the set feel lived in. He turned a background cafe into the seventh friend. Without him, Central Perk would have been just another couch and a few mugs. Mike Hannigan, the man who grounded Phoebe.
Hello, Michael. Joseph.
Buffet was always the wild card of the group. Eccentric, unpredictable, and at times heartbreakingly lonely. Enter Paul Rudd's Mike Hannigan, a character who strolled in during the later seasons and immediately felt like he'd been there all along. What made Mike important wasn't just that he became Phoebe's husband, but that he represented stability in her chaotic world. For years, Phoebe had been searching for something she never thought she'd have, a true partner who accepted her oddities without trying to change them. Mike gave her that. His charm, kindness, and occasional cluelessness balanced her eccentricities. Without Mike, Phoebe's storyline might have drifted off unresolved, leaving her as the quirky outsider among a group that found lasting love. Thanks to him, Phoebe's ending was just as complete and satisfying as the rest of the cast. Richard Burke, the one who almost changed Monica's life.
James Bond.
When Tom Selleck walked into Central Perk as Richard Burke, audiences couldn't help but gasp. With his mustache, charisma, and reputation as a Hollywood heartthrob, Richard wasn't just a character, he was a cultural moment. On paper, Richard was Monica's older boyfriend, a romance doomed from the start. But his role did more than add drama. He forced Monica to confront the realities of love, family, and compromise. Her relationship with Richard was her first truly adult love story.
Oh, well, obviously, Barbara and I split up. Otherwise, you wouldn't have
One that felt passionate, but unsustainable. When it ended, Monica's heartbreak was raw and real, setting the stage for her eventual bond with Chandler. Without Richard, Monica's journey might have felt rushed or underdeveloped. Instead, it felt earned, because we'd seen her love deeply, lose painfully, and still find her way forward. Carol Willick, the ex who defined Ross. Anita Barone briefly played her, but Jane Sibbett made the role her own. Carol Willick, Ross's ex-wife, might not have been front and center, but her influence was enormous. Her decision to leave Ross set his entire story arc in motion, and her continued presence as the mother of his child gave his character a constant anchor. Ross's journey as a divorced father wasn't just comic fodder, it was groundbreaking. In the mid-1990s, divorce and co-parenting weren't often explored on network sitcoms, and certainly not with this much heart. Carol's existence kept Ross tied to reality. Without her, Ross's life might have revolved entirely around his neurotic romances. With her, his character had stakes, responsibility, and an emotional through line that grounded the absurdities around him. Susan Bunch, the rival who stole every scene.
So, we're just waiting.
Where there's Carol, there's Susan. Played with sharp wit by Jessica Heck, Susan was Ross's foil. Their constant clashes, whether over parenting or semantics, were a reliable source of comedy. But Susan was more than a rival. She represented a new kind of family dynamic for American TV at the time. By showing Ross, Carol, and Susan navigating parenthood together, Friends quietly pushed boundaries, normalizing same-sex relationships for mainstream audiences in a way that was both humorous and heartfelt. Susan may have seemed like a side note, but she was part of a much bigger cultural shift happening in the background. Emily Waltham, the wedding that changed everything.
Emily? Yes.
I'm Rachel Green. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Ross's British whirlwind romance with Emily Waltham might have looked like a filler storyline when it began. She wasn't Rachel, and audiences never truly expected her to be the one. But her arc delivered one of the most shocking moments in sitcom history. Ross saying the wrong name at the altar. Helen Baxendale's Emily wasn't just a temporary love interest, she was the catalyst for one of the show's biggest turning points. That wedding disaster reverberated for seasons afterward, affecting Ross's relationship with Rachel and cementing his reputation as hopelessly flawed in love. Emily's impact proved that even short-term characters could leave a permanent scar on the storyline. David, the scientist guy, the love that couldn't be.
That's definitely a valid question. And the answer would be
Long
yes.
before Mike, there was David. Hank Azaria's soft-spoken scientist was Phoebe's almost happily ever after. Their romance was tender and sweet, cut short when David left for Minsk. For years, Phoebe carried the weight of that lost love, and so did the audience. When David returned later in the series, it wasn't just nostalgia, it was closure. His presence made Phoebe's eventual choice of Mike even more meaningful. Without David, Phoebe's love story might have felt too simple. With him, it became layered, bittersweet, and resonant. Sometimes the loves we don't end up with matter just as much as the ones we do. Frank Buffet Jr., the brother who needed saving.
Another girl, so we were wondering if you could be the girl that we could put it into.
Giovanni Ribisi's Frank Jr. was bizarre, unpredictable, and hilarious. At first, he looked like nothing more than comic relief, a weirdo brother thrown in for laughs. But Frank's role took a dramatic turn when Phoebe agreed to carry his triplets. That storyline could have been absurd, but it became one of the most emotional arcs of the series. Phoebe's sacrifice for Frank and his wife showed her depth, her love, and her willingness to put family above herself. Frank might have seemed useless, but he gave Phoebe one of her most defining storylines, transforming her from the eccentric sidekick into a character of profound compassion. Estelle Leonard, the agent who wouldn't quit.
So, woof take a photo for Ready Go.
Joey's acting career was often treated as a joke, and Estelle Leonard, played by June Gable, embodied that perfectly. With her raspy voice and questionable judgment, she seemed like the last person who could ever launch someone to stardom. But Estelle kept Joey's Hollywood dreams alive, however ridiculous they seemed. Through her, we saw the absurdity and heartbreak of show business. Without Estelle, Joey's storyline might have been too one-dimensional. With her, it became a tragicomic commentary on chasing fame. She wasn't just Joey's agent. She was the embodiment of his eternal hope, Mr. Heckles, the neighbor who held up a mirror. Finally, we come to Mr. Heckles, the grumpy downstairs neighbor played by Larry Hankin.
I'm going to my new apartment now.
At first, he was just a cranky old man with petty complaints, but then came his sudden death. In a shocking twist for a sitcom, his passing became a mirror for Chandler, forcing him to reflect on his own fear of ending up alone. Mr. Heckle's role was brief, but it was transformative. In his cluttered apartment, Chandler saw his possible future, and it scared him into change. That moment pushed Chandler toward the character growth that eventually led him to Monica. Without Heckles, that turning point might never have happened. Looking back, it's clear. Friends was never just about 6 people in a Manhattan apartment. It was about the world they inhabited and the unexpected characters who shaped them along the way. Each of them may have looked useless at first glance, but without their contributions, the plot would have felt hollow. That's the magic of Friends. Just like in real life, the people who pass through briefly, the ones who make us laugh, annoy us, challenge us, or break our hearts, often end up shaping our story in ways we don't realize until much later. So, the next time you rewatch the show, don't just focus on Ross and Rachel's will they won't they, or Joey's jokes, or Chandler's sarcasm. Pay attention to the so-called side characters. They may just be the secret heartbeat of a series that defined a generation.